Our third lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. This is one of the last stories the author of the Gospel of Luke tells. Let us together listen for the voice of the Lord. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus. It's about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What were you discussing with each other while you were walking along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? Then beginning with Moses and all of the prophets, he interpreted to them things about himself in all of the scriptures." As they came near to the village where they were going, he walked ahead as if he was going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at table with them, he took bread, he blessed and broke it, and he gave it to them. And their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us as he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem and found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen. He has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. They just set out walking. What else could they do? What else were they supposed to do? It's really all they knew to do. Take a walk together. You see, sometimes it's the simplest things that settle the mind, that bring a sense of normalcy to an otherwise chaotic time, peace, or at least solace found in the ordinary. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. Reloading the dishes in the dishwasher again, and maybe even again. When you hear yet another disturbing story on the news, and you just need something normal, something tangible. Vacuuming the house when you're trying to sort through something complicated at work or at school or at home. Organizing the same closet one more time while you're waiting for the results. Picking up the house. No one really knows what that is, but all of us do it, picking up the house. Running an unnecessarily necessary or necessarily unnecessary errand. Pacing while you talk on the phone. Moving stacks of papers to yet another stack of papers. Yeah. Somehow we find calm in the ordinary. the steps, the surroundings, the moments, the scenery. There's something about the predictable or the familiar in the midst of the unpredictable and unfamiliar that seems to bring recognition, understanding, acceptance, vision, hope, a sense of being, all present somehow in a new way. And this is where we find our story this morning, or what we find within it. Two disciples, two followers of Jesus walking together. And as far as we know, we haven't met either of them in the story that Luke tells about Jesus. And we only get the name of one of them in this part of the story, Cleopas. And his companion on the road remains nameless. As they're walking on their way to Emmaus, an out-of-the-way town we know little about, a town that doesn't have a modern equivalent, they were walking together to this town that's 7 miles from Jerusalem, or so that the author tells us. As they were walking in the evening on that same day of the big news of the empty tomb, they were talking together, the story says, about all of the things that had happened. All of these things. The arrest and execution of their rabbi, teacher, and friend, Jesus from Nazareth, a prophet, mighty in deed and word. The one they thought that would bring liberation, redemption to Israel, freedom from the hands of the occupiers, their oppressors, the Romans. And yet, he didn't do that. At least, not the way they had hoped. And then they heard the astounding news that Jesus' body was somehow missing from the tomb in which he had been laid, as well as a more unfathomable story that Jesus was somehow alive after all of this. Unbelievable. Yeah, so their steps together were likely cathartic after such a day, as was their conversation, normal, everyday things, bringing healing, or at least the space to process everything. What seemed important to them, or at least according to the author, was the journey. The words they shared and the experiences they recounted along the way. The distance between their feet and the past they were leaving behind. Maybe you know a thing about that too. The importance and healing power of the journey, the conversation, the distance put between yourself and the place, as well as the past or maybe even the present you're striving to leave behind. Every step somehow seems healing, or at least you feel held while you heal. Yeah, you might know a thing about that. Then there was another unexpected turn in the story as told by the author of the Gospel of Luke. This is the turn among so many others in the way the author tells the story. An unexpected visitor, a co-traveler, joined in the journey. And this might be a great way to think about Jesus, the incarnation. An unexpected visitor, a co-traveler joining along the way. And in what is a great editorial move by the author, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And Jesus said to them, "Hey, what were you discussing with each other while you were walking along?" They stood still, looking sad. We, the readers, the hearers, get to know a secret that the weary travelers don't get to know, at least not yet. The stranger was Jesus. Perhaps they didn't recognize him because they were in a haze as a result of their journey or their grief or the depth of their conversation or their surprise that anyone else would be walking along this strange road in the evening? We'll never know. And it's happened to us too, right? Missing the thing that's right there in front of our faces, even when we might be looking for it. As my mom would say, if it was a snake, it would have bit you. Yeah, so Jesus himself placed himself within their narrative. Isn't that the way? Isn't that the way of the incarnation, the way of the whole story of Jesus? No shouting from the heavens, no flashing lightning or peals of thunder, no white robes or glowing appearances. Nope, just a baby born in an out-of-the-way town in the ordinary manner to a teen mom. Just a voice calling out to unlikely people to follow. Just another person walking along with two friends on their way to Emmaus. That's his way. And when Jesus asked the question about what they were doing, they stopped, stood still, looking sad. Why wouldn't they, with the weight of their experience? And yet, he also met them in their sadness. Jesus himself, the text says, interpreted to them the things about himself in all of the scriptures, and somehow this author, the author of the Gospel of Luke, doesn't include a single part of it. Not a single word. It's as if to this author, this wasn't the important part of the story, the getting all of that narrative right. So what was important, if that wasn't it? What did these two distraught disciples understand? Where did they encounter the Christ? Well, according to the author, they found the Christ on the road, along the way, while walking, while talking. They met Jesus in the companionship, within the conversation, in the invitation, when they asked this stranger to stay with us for a while, when they reclined with him at table. Yeah, sure, they didn't realize it was him, but that wasn't the important part either. Because just because they didn't recognize him didn't mean that it wasn't him. Even though their perception was foggy, Jesus still met them there. He wasn't in disguise. He was right there with them on the road while walking in the conversation. And their hearts somehow burned within them while they were together. And finally, they realized it was him when he took the bread and he blessed it and he broke it and he gave it to them. They recognized Jesus in the sharing of a meal. Sound familiar? Y'all, we have a habit of complicating things, don't we? Us theologians and pastors and preachers, we love to talk about complex theological concepts and ideas about God. We create long words to capture such things. We write books and more books to explain the words to one another, and often we just confuse everyone all the more. And then we write more books to unpack all of the confusion. Listen, I love this stuff. I can go down these rabbit holes with the best of them. They have their place and the purpose for all of us. I mean, we are talking about the divine, the ineffable, the ethereal, the transcendent. See, I did it again. And some may say we have to build special shrines and cathedrals and temples to find the divine. There is indeed something potent about important sacred spaces like this one. I love them. I'm sure you do too. However, it cannot be just here that we discover the divine. No, I would actually argue that we cannot have that encounter here unless we also have it out there in the ordinary places and spaces. Maybe even first there before here. It's all in our story, all of it. What did this author say about where we might find the divine? Where is the Christ? Christ is found on this journey, in the steady beat of our footsteps as we walk, in our conversations about deep things, surprising things, ordinary things, in the midst of our sadness, in the well-timed song or poem or quote, in the moments when everything we once thought was important seems to have fallen apart, in our friends who have the courage to hold space for us, with us, together, in the dirt, in the dust, in the taking of the bread and the blessing it and breaking it, sharing it at the table as we dine, in the faces and the voices of the strangers we meet along the way. Somehow the Christ finds us in the ordinary, the steps, the surroundings, the movements, the scenery, the faces, the places, the conversations, the bread. All of the times that our hearts burn within us while walking on the road. The Christ all around us. The Christ within us. Friends, behold the Christ. The Christ. The Christ. The Christ. May our hearts burn within us as we see the Christ all along the way. To God be the glory. Amen.